Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lewanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not so humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
All right, welcome everybody to today's episode. Episode number 2 in video format for us. Nice to see Mr. Miller opposite microphone and camera again for me. Again, how are you doing tonight, Lewanika?
I am doing quite well, thank you. Yeah. This is I'm starting to dig the video
Yeah,
format, and
it's a thing. Yeah. We're
yeah,
we're we're, we're working it out. Yeah.
yeah. I think I can hit my marks. I don't have to put tape down on my rug exactly, but I think you would prefer that.
I mean, that's only because you got a very kind and benevolent editor who will continue to go ahead and shift around your camera position as you go around in your chair. That's yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you too. I'm also in a fantastic mood, man. Coming off of a great session 0 with my new table game. I mean, 5 hungry players, which was an awful lot of fun. And I have not run a table with that many brand new players before. I don't think, because of the 5 people on there, one of them's been playing forever. The other 4 have either only ever played with me in 2 or 3 sessions through the starter adventure for D&D 5, or never played before. And it's hot, and by naturally the way that the party shook out, there's a warlock, there's a paladin, there's a cleric, there is a warforged ranger, and a rogue. It's a nice balanced party. It has kind of a little bit of everything. Yeah. It's gonna be real hot. It's gonna be really hot. So I am excited. We ran through kind of like a starter adventure, just kind of get them rolling some dice after doing character generation. Get them doing some stuff, rolling some dice after doing their characters, and kind of like set up what is going to be session number 1, which will be a week from this coming Thursday. So that'll be looking forward to that. And keen-eared listeners, maybe within the last couple months or so, may have been able to sniff out some clues about what I'm going to be doing here. But rest assured that it's going to be just a golden adventure, really, at the end of the day. So it'll be it'll be fantastic. So
Well, you have the keys to success, and I look forward to
yeah,
where you go with
yeah.
that.
I mean, beauty
Um,
is in the eye of the beholder. So
yeah.
that's we'll have to see. Yeah. So we'll see where this one goes. Yeah. So
Excellent. Yeah, I too had a really good gaming situation this weekend. We recorded episode 8 for Star Trek Preservations with our crew, but in addition to the start of that episode, we also recorded for the record and will be aired a session ReZero where we updated the STA character, Star Trek Adventures RPG by Modiphius Entertainment, from the 1E versions to the 2E version. For those who don't play Star Trek and maybe have not caught too much of us talking about this, which would be strange because I talk about it all the time.
exactly.
But
Yeah. At least once a week. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But Star Trek Adventures has moved to second edition. There are changes in the game. There are changes in the rule set, but the changes from a character perspective are fairly limited. So in less than an hour, a little bit longer for recording and tech issues, things like that. But in less than an hour, we converted 5 player characters to second edition player characters as a whole. And I think it was really good. And honestly, most of the time that made it take an hour was us giving some explanations, providing some extra details for the audience, because all of our cast really wants the audience to understand the
Yeah.
game, understand how these changes work. So it was a teaching experience for the audience. So if you play STA and you want to learn how to convert, or you're worried about this, you play first edition and you've heard things and you don't necessarily want to do it. When we run episode 8, which should be the second week in
In a couple of
September,
weeks here. Yeah.
yeah, when we run that ReZero episode, I think you're going to be very pleased with how easy those conversions are.
Yep. Yeah, and so now that we've done characters too, we'll also be doing one later. We wanted to get the character conversion out right away, but we'll also be doing a conversion of the ships in Star Trek Preservations. Also, that'll be airing later in the year, probably after after we enter our break for between after season 2. But yeah, good work on that front. Nice to see that we can go ahead and get that laid out. Yeah, good to go on that
Yeah.
front. Yeah. So
And I
let's get
think,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say tonight we're here to talk about something. We're actually recording
Mm,
at a interesting time for us. It'll still air at the
yeah.
right time, but we're recording on a very different day because there's big news that happened over the weekend in the land of high fantasy,
Yeah.
specifically the conversion from D&D 5e
Yeah.
2014 to D&D 2024.
Exactly.
And we're
Yeah.
here to talk about that topic because where
Eh,
I think STA did a fantastic job in their changeover. We're
yeah.
going to talk about a company that quite
Perhaps
likely,
didn't.
or at least in my humble opinion, did not.
Did not. Wizards of the Coast, I need to go ahead and let you know that Josh from Tabletop Journeys, has a bone to pick with you tonight. And the reason is because we were supposed to be talking about the latest Dragonlance novel, Dragons of Eternity, tonight. And instead, we're talking about this nonsense. And so naturally, what are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be talking about what the hell has happened at D&D Beyond over the last week. So like Lewanika said, we're recording on a slightly different night tonight. Normally we record on Tuesdays. We're recording on a Monday tonight. And part of it is because we wanted to go ahead and get this recorded just as soon as possible. But also because we also wanted to wait a few days and kind of let the smoke die down a little bit to go ahead and see kind of what happened here. And I feel like that was the right decision because today we have more clarity than we did on Friday of last week. Let me go ahead and set the stage about where I was Friday morning, and then Lewanika, let you go ahead and come across to go ahead and walk through the timeline of what happened over the past weekend and where we are today. So Friday morning, as I want to do, I was in my bed watching TikTok videos, and all of a sudden, all over TikTok were content creators and players talking about how something was going on at D&D Beyond. This is early Friday morning, 6 to 7 o'clock my time, right? On the East Coast.
Lewanika was still asleep.
Lewanika was still asleep, exactly, right? And so knowing that I had a game Sunday night, we had Spiro and the cast of Spiro didn't even know that I was going to be there except for Benito, so that was fun. But knowing that I needed a character on Sunday night and knowing that I had just had this awesome in-person game session that I wanted to go ahead and plug the characters into D&D Beyond, I was like, let me go see what's up. What I found on Friday morning and have come to find out since was most likely because changes were being rolled out at the point that I was looking. But basically, the character that I looked at, the big character that I looked at, the biggest change that I saw, there were some spell changes and everything like that, some minor stuff that I wasn't super concerned about. But what the big thing that I found was that the species attribute bonus to background attribute bonus process was half baked. I had lost any ASI changes that I had made that were related to that character's species, but had not gained them on their background. So he has a dexterity of 20, he only had a dexterity of 18, and without basically dumping the character and rebuilding it from scratch, there wouldn't have been any way for me to go ahead and do that. There was no mechanism to go ahead and bridge that gap and get that. So I knew at that point that we were dealing with some sort of like an implementation issue. Things were kind of getting rolled out, and I wasn't really sure what the deal was. Work days happened, blah, 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 and everything like that. And then we started seeing other reports about basically other people seeing very similar things where they were going into D&D Beyond expecting 2014 content and only getting 2024 content and not having any option of switching back, which I think that it would be reasonable to say, the tabletop role-playing game community that still relies on D&D Beyond and still plays D&D 5 lost their ever-loving minds about that. So that brings us up to today. Lewanika, fill in the gaps in the timeline here that I haven't mentioned. So
Yeah. So prior to Friday morning, and I have my handy dandy notepad, which I don't break out often, but I remember we had a guest who commented, I don't think everybody's ever taken out a notepad before. Well, I do this. I use paper.
Yeah.
Odd that we're talking about a digital tool, and I'm using paper to
Right.
report on
Right.
it. That says something. But essentially, right before Friday, there was a change log. And I don't know exactly how far it was before. I personally didn't see it. Josh actually sent it to me Friday morning. What when he was trying to figure out what was going on, he was asking me questions because I use D&D Beyond far more significantly, more
Yep.
frequently. So he was asking me as kind of our in-house subject matter expert, so to speak, on the tool, even though he's our in-house subject matter expert on programming.
On all things
Um,
technical. Yeah.
all things technical, right? Again, me, paper. But as I was reading the changelog, I was very keen on specific language that was being used and some of the timelines that they were rolling out. Um, that will come up later in this conversation, by the way, the specific language issue. But it was also worded in a way that I wanted to actually hear it as well as read it. So I then put on my e-reader to have it read to me. And I actually played that through twice to make sure I was gathering what it was saying. And essentially, it boils down to they were saying that um, all of the things that you have purchased, you'll still have access to. They were saying that at a certain date, and I believe that date to be August 27th,
I think tomorrow,
would
right?
be the date. There's going to be kind of a blackout period and then a changeover, and then you'll start seeing the 2024 content available at that point if you have purchased those things. Uh, but it didn't say some very specific things, and that's where we're going to get to towards the end. But essentially, the changelog identified that 2014 stuff, if that's what you paid for it and then that's what you're using, it's still available to you. 2024 stuff, if you buy it, you will then have that. And at some point, when things get released into commons and all that, there'll also be free elements of that also available. That was the basics of the changelog, and then it rolled out when they're going to do certain things in a typical changelog fashion. I started watching many of the same videos and TikToks and YouTube shorts as Josh was, and some other ones that Josh didn't watch. Like when these things come up, Josh watches a bunch of things. We share some common things, and then I will watch some other things so we can cover as much ground as possible, get a breath of it. And what Josh described as the community losing their ever loving minds was a bit of an understatement. There were
Yeah.
folks who were irate, like it was loud. It was there were people
Yeah. It was a
who were
lot.
very loud. And I after because I watched them after I read the changelog. Like I had done the changelog first. I was paying very close attention to what they were complaining about. And in many cases, with the sole exception of something on your sheet disappearing, much of what they were complaining about was spelled out in the changelog and shouldn't be an issue as long as it remains available.
Yeah.
Uh, there was some question as to how it was going to remain available. There was some question as to where it was going to be available. And there was some question clearly as to when. What Josh mentioned earlier and what I kind of said at the time, and we kind of conferred with our two very different life work experience was pretty much the same. This sounds like they screwed up doing some behind the scenes things.
Yep.
And so some changes were visible earlier than they wanted them to be.
Yep.
Unintended consequences. That's a shame on them. However, the bigger issue, not many of the people I was hearing complain about, like I saw people complaining about what disappeared off the page. What I didn't see a lot of people complaining about is what ended up being a bigger issue.
Yeah.
By the weekend, now we're rolling into Saturday, it became very clear that no matter how you had access to 2014 content, you weren't going to have access to a playable character sheet on D&D Beyond
Yep.
with 2014 content.
Yeah.
That was a big issue.
Yep.
For those of us who are in the middle of campaigns that are too far gone to change, or for those who don't want to ever change, that huge.
I'd literally
Huge.
just started a campaign. I had literally just started a campaign, and now D&D Beyond was taking away the only tool that I had to go ahead and make characters because the 2024 content isn't out yet.
Yep. And
Okay.
more importantly, he had spent about a month teaching new players those
Yeah.
rules. The only rules available to teach new players, to bring them into the hobby, to
Yeah.
show them the game we have loved for almost all
Yep.
of our lives.
Yeah.
And then there was going to be a rules change. That's how you lose new players.
Totally. Yeah.
Now, on Saturday, other things happened. I'm moving down the timeline now. Roll 20 was clear, obvious, and direct.
Yeah.
If you use our tool, you're going to have access to 2014 if that's the sheet you want, or 2024 if that's the sheet you want, and we're not taking it away. There is an asterisk on that Lewanika, put on that statement, and we'll get to that as we go as well.
Yeah.
But they were clear. By that time, I had messaged all of the groups that I'm a member of saying, hey, I don't know exactly what's going on with sheets. Print what you got now, just in case.
Yep.
I wasn't sounding the alarms, yell, hate WotC like a lot of folks were. I was saying, back up your data.
Yep.
And it brought up an old conversation that Josh and I have had for years about digital ownership, quote unquote,
Yep.
versus you're digitally renting something that they can take away at any time.
Yep.
And this was a really obvious and blatant example of that.
Yep.
You couple this with our conversation last week about Josh trying to find a copy of the old book, which may not be available or it's clearly out of print and
Yep.
we will be hard to find in short order.
Yeah.
And that really brings this conversation home. Sunday rolls around. I notice late Sunday that the background piece that I was looking for seems to have shifted, or I may not have remembered where it was because after you build your background, you don't see it very often. But it seems to have moved its position, but it was there. I also noted on Saturday when we printed our sheets that all of the things that Josh said were missing, I couldn't find them on the digital tool, but they printed on the sheet anyway.
Yeah.
But I also didn't notice for my individual characters the loss of the ability scores.
Yeah.
It didn't happen with the characters I had.
Yeah. Which
And
again,
as Josh
just to
said,
reiterate that, I think that was because I was looking super early in the middle of it changing over. So I may have just been
yep,
super unlucky in that.
yep. Timing is key when you're talking about digital tools. If you look at something before somebody presses the enter button, you see before it was fixed
Right.
or before they finished. So we don't know about that timeline. WotC is very unlikely to give us that information.
Yeah.
So beyond this loose conjecture, we're going to let that lie. But all of those things seem to be there and seem to be back. But I still have paper backups of my characters.
Right.
Actually, I have them in PDF form. I haven't printed them yet because my printer's a thing. But what's important is backed up my characters, contacted the groups that I run, contacted the groups that I play in, contacted some other groups that I am aware use the tool almost fully for their integration and their adaptation, their ability to adapt to maps and or the encounter builder, which I use heavily when I play D&D.
Sure. Yeah.
I know Benito uses the encounter builder fairly heavily in some games he runs as well. So these are things that we were concerned about.
Yeah.
Let's move to this morning. Roughly, and at the time of this recording, 21 hours ago. So that would have been late last night, if I'm correct in my timing, or
Sure.
overnight.
Yeah.
WotC printed a statement.
Yeah.
An addendum to their changelog. It's actually listed as the 2024 D&D Beyond rule set changelog update. I'm going to bullet point it. Josh is going to make sure this is on the screen. And
up. Yeah.
so for folks, please pause, take a look. I think it'll be here-ish, there-ish, or maybe there-ish. I don't know. I don't see where it is, but it's there. But what it basically says is this. We heard the feedback of the community, and we're going to make sure you have access to continue using D&D Beyond 2014 character sheets and or 2024 character sheets that will be allowed and set up. That brings up a number of questions where I'm going to let Josh take over and ask those questions, but that's
Yeah.
where we were as of this morning. I just have to say that that was a crazy timeline of events,
Yeah.
and I would be willing to bet that 90% of it was preventable. Even though they did
Yeah.
their best to kind of give some information, there are pieces of this that they just handled poorly.
Yeah. So
Josh, you want to take us in at this
yeah,
particular
so let
round?
me dive into this a little bit here in terms of my background as a software engineer, and also my background as as for the last 3 years as someone who's been very critical of many of the moves that WotC has made that have been anti-consumer. Let's just be honest. Like they are not making moves that make people who want to consume their products easy, right? Um, so as a software engineer, absolutely. Much like the CloudStrike issue that happened a few months ago, which doesn't even feel like it could be that long ago at this point. But anyway, regardless, D&D broke beyond broke a cardinal rule. You never push out software changes on Friday. Like you don't do that. This was probably forced through. They were probably running behind. WotC was maybe putting pressure on them to go ahead and get it done, and they needed to go ahead and get it done by this week. They put something out there. Either it wasn't properly tested or it was properly tested and something unexpected happened. Like those kind of things happen in software, right? Deployment. So there was definitely an implementation issue, right? The other side of this coin is that there seems to be bad intent also, which is what made the botched implementation issue so much worse. If we go back over the last 18 months of content that has come out from Wizard of the Coast about this update, these changes were unexpected. And I don't think that putting out a change log that no one's going to read on the digital platform the day before they make these changes is enough to go ahead and say, oh, well, they've covered themselves on the thing, right? I think that that is nobody that isn't a computer programmer reads change logs from unless you're a podcaster like us. So that's not enough to go ahead and cover them. They really Lewanika and I got into this debate earlier today about whether or not they had been flat out lying to us for 18 months or were merely being disingenuous as to their true intentions. And I really think at the end of the day that for me, that is a distinction without a difference. Whether or not they were lying by omission, by, when they would say things like, oh, well, the 2024 rules are going to be fully backwards compatible with the 2014 rules. You can use whatever rules you want. To go ahead and say that, but not have it apply to the number one digital platform that you produce in an era where 80% of games are online is
Problematic
bullshittery.
at best.
Bullshittery of the highest magnitude is the phrase that I was going to use, but problematic is probably a better one, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think they have a lot of issues here.
Yeah, and so earlier I mentioned the specific wording, like I heard it when I was reading it, and then when I played it back twice to make sure I was hearing it correctly. And Josh's point, broken down in the simplest of terms, is this: if you are providing a notification to your purchasing community, the public, that is legalese. I mean, that crazy, weird legal language that you see in
Yeah.
Congress when they pass a law that says you have to stop at a stop sign pursuant to the adjacent law in subsection 14(5)(b) or whatever, or some version thereof.
Yeah.
Uh, Josh is right. Even if people do see it, they're not going to, the bulk of people will not get it. And I'm not saying I'm smarter than anybody else, but it is my job to fine tooth comb and dig and find information.
Yeah.
Right. So my job is to get to the whole kernel of truth. And honestly, the issue here is um, uh, I think they were very legalistic in the way their changelog was worded. And were it not for the implementation issue, which likely was fairly separate from what was going on and what the real issue is here, um, it may not have been caught until after it was too late. Because I kept saying through this weekend to Josh, if it's on the printed sheet, the data is still there. It's not entirely lost yet.
Yep.
But if this had come up after
Oh,
the 27th,
yeah.
would the data have been lost?
Yeah,
Who
and
knows?
we have no way of knowing, right? I mean, who knows if what had to happen in the background to make the transition is what we would call in the technical world a destructive change or not. But yeah, could you imagine if the storm that blew up this weekend over this issue had happened Tuesday morning and everybody like running downstairs like it was Christmas morning to go ahead and look and see the brand new D&D Beyond, to go ahead and open up their character sheets and see them all basically massacred and not working properly and missing things and everything like that. I mean, it was bad
Yeah,
enough that they hit the button and they did it wrong on a Friday before a gaming weekend. Like, let's be honest. Like most people game
yeah,
Friday night, Saturday night, right? Like
yep.
those are the big gaming nights. So the fact that they did it on a Friday was bad. That was just a bad idea. But could you imagine if people opened up their character sheets Tuesday morning and said, "What is all of this?" And again, I want to be really clear here that I am not talking about the fact that I had a spell and now when I click on that spell to see what that spell does, I see the 2024 language instead of the 2014 language. Like this is not a version war issue. It is, however, I bought certain things and I built certain characters under certain rules. And now you're telling me I don't have access to that anymore. Like I can't,
Through the character sheet.
exactly. Like, I mean, let's be honest. If I really wanted to go ahead and play second edition, I could. I could go over to my cabinet, I could grab the books, I could make up characters, we'd calculate our THACO, we would be dealing with negative armor classes, and we'd have a grand old time. And now you're
Eh,
telling me that I can't do that with the 5e rules.
Yeah, I'll
Mm,
even go one step
yeah.
further. If I wanted to turn around and play th- 3.0 or 3.5,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
can go over to the cabinet,
Yeah.
grab those books. Heck, I can go over to the other cabinet, grab the disc that has e-tools
Yeah,
still on
totally.
it,
Yeah.
because that database, including all the homebrew stuff I built into that thing,
Yeah.
still functions. All I got to do is load it on my computer, and I have access to that tool and the character sheets it produces.
Yeah.
None of that is taken away from me because
Right.
it was a physical thing that I had purchased and
Yeah.
had access to.
Yep.
I actually owned it versus rented it through a tool that somebody else controls how it
Yeah.
changes, how it looks, how it functions.
Yep. So,
And
yeah.
so I think now that we've kind of clarified the issue, I think we should also clarify where we are with all this. Despite everything that happened over the weekend, the character sheets are functional. There are some things that are still a little tweaky and weird. We're not at the end of this change process that they're going through, but
Yep.
they have stated in writing, for all that WotC's writing is worth, because
Yep.
sometimes things
Yep.
that are unchangeable and such can change. Um, that was a dig. I apologize.
Yeah. The digital
Little
statements
mean
are with the
spirited.
paper they're written on. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have stated that you will have access to, you will continue to have access to your 2014 content on your character sheets. They will still function. Your 2024 stuff will be available, and you can
Yeah.
do that. And it's a matter of hitting a toggle,
Yep.
and you'll be able to carry on there. I will also add that even under the way that they were going to do it, your 2014 books that you purchased would still be there. Just anything in there, you would have to go to the sources and open up the book in a tab and see
Sure.
it. It just simply wouldn't function as I can hit a button to make a spell work, or I can hit a button
Yeah.
to use a specific type of attack, or
Yeah.
to see how a given feature might
Yeah.
function.
You're basically
So
destroying the digital experience for 2014 consumers.
yeah,
And
they yeah.
yeah, here's the bigger question, and we're actually, if you can believe it, we're almost running out of time here tonight. But here's the bigger question, and this is kind of what gets under me a little bit here is that how does WotC not see this coming? Like, how do they possibly let a Lorraine Williams situation happen again? I don't. I I am I literally don't understand how they could look at this and say, "Well, people aren't going to care
Yeah,
for real." Like, I don't get it.
I, I have a lot of answers to that, and I think it is the part about myself I like the least. And maybe I'm jaded by elements of my life in my past. that even in one of the brightest corners of my life, which is gaming and this hobby and this community, I am never entirely and totally surprised by bad actors within that space. I'm not saying I look for it. I'm not saying I see it around every corner. But when somebody does a thing, and specifically when that somebody or some entity like a company does a thing for the third or fourth or fifth time that I do not like, I'm no longer surprised. So
Yeah.
when you ask me, how do they not see it? I think the answer is quite simple. On some level, they don't care.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean I don't like the game? I hate the game. I'm not going to play the game. No. What that does mean is I'm going to be a little bit more careful and cautious about the way I experience the game, the way I pay for things. I'm not advocating a boycott. If this is the tool that works for you and your table, it's the way that makes it accessible for the most people or the people that you game with, people in your life, then by all means continue to use it. But just be aware, pay attention to things like the change log, because when they're going to do some things, they're very good about covering themselves legally. So they're going to give us the clues.
Yeah.
Or tune into Tabletop Journeys. As we know things, you will know things.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So don't
anyway,
go out.
yeah.
We're not burning down the barn today. We're not yelling and screaming. We
Yeah.
are expressing concerns, cautions,
Yeah.
clearing the air. Folks, you'll be able to keep playing for the foreseeable future the way you have been. We're just saying exercise some cautions.
Yep.
Back up your data. I'm not saying every time you level up, back that up, but you may want to every tier back up your character in some
Yep.
fashion. I'm not saying go out and burn down some trees and print every one of them,
Yeah.
but it allows you to save a PDF. You may want to create a folder and just save those from time to time. For
Yep.
GMs, be aware of that with your player characters. If you've got 5 or 6 characters in your campaign, if you've got things that are set up very digitally, again,
Be aware. Yeah.
be aware.
Yeah.
It may be worth saving those in some digital fashion,
Yep.
or eventually as a DM, I've got a lot of binders, and 3M is probably going to sell a whole lot of sheet protectors in the next couple months as I start looking at all the things I've homebrewed and some of the things and kind of put there.
Yeah.
There's a reason why much of the things we do here, Tabletop Journeys, are not on D&D Beyond. We keep them in other places. As far
We have a
as
lot on D&D Beyond too, though.
yeah, we do. We play test there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but to be fair, there are things that I don't have there, and there are reasons why they're not there.
See, just think,
And
everybody. So that's normally something that would get cut out when he's talking nonsense. And instead, you get to go and see my reaction.
Yeah.
Once I
Yeah.
realize that my face can't lie, it's like, so.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's our piece on the D&D Beyond controversy of August of 2024. I have no doubt that there won't be more. You know that if there are more, you can hear them here. But as always, we'd like to just go ahead and invite you, if you're looking for ways to go ahead and support the show. We have an awful lot of fun doing it. We are really excited to be doing more of this video content. We would love to go ahead and hear your feedback about whether or not you think the video content is working. And if you like seeing our shining faces on YouTube and Spotify, as well as just hearing our mellifluous voices over your podcast channel. So please subscribe, comment down below on the video. We'd love to go ahead and hear your thoughts. As always, please
Ring the bell.
Hit the notification bell so that you get notified every time we not only put out this show, but also Preservations, which comes out every Tuesday, and On the Right Path, which comes out every other Wednesday, and Dr. Homebrew, which comes out every other Wednesday also. See, they intertwine together like a two-headed snake going back and forth. And as always, if you're looking for another way to go ahead and support the show that is really helps us keep the lights on and keep the podcast track rolling, please go check us out on Patreon. It's www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. And last time around, we forgot to go ahead and shout out our adventure level members. So kudos once again, everybody, and huge thank you to Marty Napier, Adam Scaramella, Dave Rideout, Joe Harney, and Tim Morris. Thank you very much for the support. We really appreciate it. And again, if you would like early access to all of our episodes, invites to our Patreon only games, and some other really cool bennies that come up from time to time, like free copies of our book material, like the Make 100 catalog of Relics of Power that's about to go ahead and come out in PDF. Can't believe that book's finally done. Go check us out at www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. All right, Mr. Miller. What else you got for tonight? Anything else?
Be sure to tune in next week when we are meeting with Pete Saloom from Pear Tree Studios about his brand new exciting adventure, Shadows of the Sacred Hills. This is a Savage Worlds
Savage Worlds.
adventure module that we have actually done an actual play for. So, in addition to talking with Pete about the adventure and his history and his content creation, we're going to follow that with the actual play itself over the next few weeks, and then after that we're just going to do a review of the game itself. Now that actual play is going to include our dear friend from the D&D Lorecast, Sergio, and it's awesome.
It was
There's
so
some
great to
serious role
throw
play.
dice with Sergio, honestly. Like that is something that we have been talking about and trying to find some way to make that happen with Sergio for a really, really long time. And man alive, that actual play is good. So yeah, I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to that. Yeah. So
some solid gaming was had, and
absolutely, yeah.
I look forward to hearing from you all about it.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That is our show for tonight. We'll be back next week talking some Savage Worlds. So until then, take care. Have a good night. Be good to yourselves. Stay healthy. And yeah, we'll talk to you then.
Roll them bones. Good night, all.